The medical bay of the stellar convergence hummed with sterile efficiency, but the screams echoing through its corridors were anything but peaceful. Dr. Vexithari, the ship's chief medical officer and a being whose species had perfected surgical precision over millennia, stood outside the trauma room with mandibles clicking in frustration. "They will not let anyone near them," she said, her compound eyes reflecting the harsh overhead lights. "The younglings are badly injured, but their instincts won't allow treatment." Captain Thorax, a massive Quilthan warrior whose species had conquered half a dozen star systems through sheer ferocity, looked through the observation window at the two cubs huddled in the corner. They were Vakshari, apex predators from a death world where nothing grew without claws and everything hunted. The explosion in the cargo bay had left them with severe burns and lacerations, but every time a medic approached, they snarled and snapped, their needle-sharp teeth flashing despite their obvious pain. "We've tried sedation darts," Vexthari continued. "Their metabolism burns through it too quickly. Stun fields just make them more agitated. They're dying, Captain, and they won't let us help." The captain's forearms crossed over his armored chest. "What about their guardian?" "Dead in the explosion. They watched her die trying to shield them." A soft voice interrupted from behind them. "Maybe they just need someone who understands." Both officers turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen, the human xenobiologist who'd joined the crew 3 months prior. She was small by galactic standards, barely reaching Vexithari's thorax, with no natural weapons, no armor plating, no obvious evolutionary advantages, just soft skin, binocular vision, and an unsettling tendency to smile at things that should terrify her. "With respect, Dr. Chen," Vexthari said, "these are Vakshari cubs. They've already attacked 4 of my staff. What makes you think?" "Because I've read their file," Sarah said quietly, pulling up a datapad. "Vakshari have pack bonds similar to Earth canines. They're not just injured, they're traumatized and terrified. They watched their protector die. Right now, they're not thinking like patients. They're thinking like scared kids who don't know who to trust." Captain Thorax's scales rippled with doubt. "And you believe you can gain their trust? You who they've never met?" Sarah looked through the window at the 2 cubs. The larger one, probably barely 6 standard years old, was trying to shield its smaller sibling despite a compound fracture in its foreleg. The smaller one was whimpering, its breathing shallow and rapid, classic signs of shock. "I'd like to try," she said. Vexthari's mandibles clattered in what might have been a laugh. "You'll be torn apart." "Maybe," Sarah shrugged. "But right now I'm the only option they have. Unless you're planning to let them die." The captain studied the human for a long moment. He'd seen her work with the ship's livestock, the exotic creatures they transported between worlds. She had a way with animals that defied logic, creatures that would gore or poison other handlers would eat from her hand. It was unsettling, this human talent for empathy. 5 minutes, he said finally. "If they attack, we pull you out." Sarah nodded and stepped toward the door. She paused at the threshold, then did something that made both officers recoil. She ordered the room's lights dimmed to 30% and disabled the overhead speakers that had been broadcasting calming frequencies. "What are you doing?" Vexthari demanded. "Creating space," Sarah said simply. "Sometimes the kindest thing isn't to take away the pain, it's to sit with someone in it." She entered the room slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. The cubs' heads snapped toward her immediately, their eyes, 6 of them each, locking onto this new threat. The larger one growled, a sound that vibrated through the deck plating. Sarah didn't approach. Instead, she sat down on the floor 5 meters away and simply waited. The cubs watched her, confused. Every other being had tried to grab them, to force treatment, to overwhelm them with numbers and technology. This one just sat there. Minutes passed. Sarah remained still, her breathing slow and steady. She didn't make eye contact, a trick she'd learned from working with traumatized animals. Direct eye contact meant challenge. She kept her gaze soft, unfocused, giving them space to assess her. The smaller cub whimpered again, and Sarah's heart clenched. She could see the thermal burns across its flank, the way it favored its left side. Without looking directly at them, she began to hum. Not a song, just a low rhythmic sound. The same tone mothers across 1,000 species used to soothe frightened children. The larger cub's ears twitched. It looked at its sibling, then back at Sarah. Slowly, incrementally, it shifted its weight. Sarah kept humming, kept breathing. She thought about the file she'd read. How Vakshari Young bonded through physical proximity, through the shared experience of survival. They didn't trust words. They trusted presence. After what felt like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, the larger cub moved. Not toward her, but it stopped actively shielding its sibling. A test, an opening. Sarah reached slowly into her medical kit and pulled out a dermal regenerator. The most basic tool, nothing threatening. She held it up where they could see it, then set it on the floor between them. She didn't push it forward. She just left it there. "I know you're scared," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it hurts. I know you don't know me and you don't know if you can trust anyone right now." The cubs stared at her, at the device, at each other. Sarah inched forward just one movement. The larger cub tensed but didn't attack. Another inch. Then another. Each movement broadcast her intentions. Slow, careful, non-threatening. Finally, she was within arm's reach. She could smell the burnt fur, the fear scent rolling off them in waves. The smaller cub was fading, she could see it in its eyes. They were running out of time. She picked up the regenerator and looked directly at the larger cub for the first time. "I'm going to help your sibling now," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's gonna sting, but I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay right here with you both until it's over. Do you understand?" The cub stared at her. For a moment, Sarah thought it might attack, its muscles coiled, claws extending. Then slowly, it pulled back its foreleg, exposing its injured sibling. Permission granted. Sarah moved with careful deliberation, narrating each action. "I'm going to touch the wound now. Yes, that stings. I know, I'm sorry. I'm cleaning it. This will help it heal." Her voice remained steady, a constant anchor in their chaos. The smaller cub whined and tried to pull away, but the larger one leaned in, pressing against both Sarah and its sibling. Not attacking, comforting, creating a pack moment. Sarah worked quickly but gently, treating the burns, sealing lacerations, administering pain relief. The cub shook but didn't fight. When she moved to the larger cub's broken leg, it growled again. But she just nodded. "I know, this one's really going to hurt. But I need you to be brave for one more minute." She locked eyes with the cub. "Just one more minute and then the pain stops." "Can you do that?" The cub held her gaze and something passed between them, an understanding older than language, deeper than words. It bared its neck slightly, the ultimate gesture of trust in a predator species. Sarah set the bone. The cub's scream rattled the walls, but it didn't bite, didn't claw. It just screamed and shook while Sarah worked. While the smaller cub pressed against it, while this strange soft creature with no claws and no armor stayed true to her word and didn't leave. When it was over, Sarah sat back, exhausted. Both cubs were stable, sedated now that the immediate trauma was addressed. The larger one rested its massive head on her lap, and the smaller one was draped across its sibling, all 6 eyes half closed. The door hissed open. Vexthari stood there, mandibles agape. "How?" Sarah stroked the cub's head gently. "They didn't need a better medic," she said quietly. "They needed someone who would be honest with them. Someone who wouldn't pretend it didn't hurt, but who would promise to stay anyway." Captain Thorax stepped into the room, his 4 eyes studying the scene with newfound respect. "Your species continues to surprise us, Dr. Chen." Sarah smiled tiredly. "Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the bravest thing isn't to be fearless. It's to be afraid and hurt and do the hard thing anyway. We've just gotten good at recognizing that in others." The smaller cub's breathing was steady now, peaceful. The larger one's grip on Sarah's leg loosened as the sedatives took full effect. In the dimmed light of the medical bay, surrounded by beings who could tear her apart without effort, the human sat and kept her promise. She stayed.